Okay, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. I am Opus Night, and you have entered Night Vision. Tonight, we have Jennifer, Chris, and Michael, all three of which are renowned authors, and they're going to tell us about their lovely books. Michael, we're going to start with you. You want to introduce yourself, love?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Michael. Sorry, I'm trying to open up my stuff up here. So my name is Michael. I'm actually a new author. So this is my debut debut novel that I'm about to be publishing on December 31st. I don't know. I've done a number of different things. I'm an entrepreneur. I run a family travel business, and I was in the military for 8 years. And yeah, I've done quite a few different things. So I don't know what else to give you as an intro. I am a family man. I have a wife. I have 2 kids. 9-year-old and a 1-year-old. So one of them's asleep in the room right now.
Beautiful. Can we see that lovely book?
Yes, so I do not have it on print yet, unfortunately. I'm waiting for it to be shipped to me. I just put it in the order today. So I will show you, let me flip over my camera and I will show you the cover.
Very
on
nice.
my screen. So that is the cover of my book and the spine and the back. So
beautiful. Now, is this your debut?
Yes, it is.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
We love that. Chris.
Hi. My pen name is actually Hugo Hobbs.
Aha. Go ahead and tell us everything there is about the book and show us.
Absolutely. My book is on ebook right now, and it will also be in print either at the end of this month or early next month. It's called Quest for Fire. I have a picture.
Beautiful.
And the blurb is, for reasons unknown, an ancient elemental power known as the source of fire has forsaken its vowed peace. Once again, it will meddle in the wars of light and darkness. The first magic user to link with the source will have the living embodiment of fire living inside them, a union of flesh and ancient power. The alliance of elves and men had a vision of a dysfunctional group that was foreseen at the mysterious source site. Military, a notorious convict, and a princess. They must find a way to work together as they fight off hordes of undead, orcs, trolls, and necromancers on a mission filled with peril. However, the forces of darkness led by a dragon are already one step ahead of them. War breaks out and the slaughter is fierce. The dragon's armies attack the Alliance lands and all hope seems lost. Their only salvation will depend on a quest for fire.
I am so excited. I love the idea of necromancers, dragons.
Oh yeah, it's got it all.
Beautiful. I love that. Can you show us the cover?
Absolutely. Let me get that cover for you again. Here we are.
Oh, lovely.
Coming in.
Lovely.
And like I said, it'll be in paperback end of December, early January.
Beautiful. Very nice. Jennifer. Hello.
Hi, I'm Jennifer. I published my first book September 23rd of this year, so still pretty new. I have it on ebook and paperback. So that's the cover, the Cardinal War. And then my little blurb. With no known heir to the empire, 4 conflicting noble families will use whatever means necessary to claim power for themselves, but only one can become the next ruler. With the nobles fighting amongst themselves, some people of the empire struggle to survive. Growing up on the streets of Mordale, Eileen has never known her family or much else beyond the best place to steal a meal. This all changes after one stormy night of loss, fear, and escape. Eileen is suddenly plunged into Mordale's political turmoil, and her fate is intertwined with a warm-hearted but strict-to-his-duty messenger of the empire, Diethy. Although raised in the political world, Diethy's loyalties are challenged as he must decide between his duties as a messenger and a hidden truth that could change the course of not only his life, but of that of every citizen in Mordale. as the imminent civil war has taken in more than just the noble families. He must stay unbiased while making decisions best for the empire, while helping those he cares about to make the best decision for themselves. In the end, Eileen must determine who she is and who she will become as the struggle to rule consumes Mordale, while Diethy must choose between duty and his heart before too much is lost.
I love it. Very, very nice. Now, Michael, I didn't forget about you, dear. Did you want to read the back of your blurb?
Sure, yeah, it's always worse to go first. I didn't know what I was supposed to do.
Okay.
Okay, so the title of my book is Keeper 829, and here's the blurb. In 2098, a shadowy organization called The Institution governs a harmonious collective society. The new faithless world is a veritable Eden, or is it? Nesha Gray looks human, but she's not. A letter and a stranger thrust Nesha into a darker reality where humans are a crop for reaping. In a world of betrayal, deception, and genetic engineering, Nesha finds her purpose isn't what she thought. Only questions remain. Who is coming? Are humans worth saving? Who are the real enemies?
Very nice. Very nice. They all sound wonderful. So we're going to get into question time. Everyone ready?
Ready.
Absolutely.
Okay. When structuring your books, just to let you know, I ask questions that are relevant to readers. I have a lot of readers that will email me throughout the week, and I try to condense them and pose them to all the different authors, just so the readers can have kind of like an inside track on the goings on the books and the author themselves. So please don't hold back. We are more than interested, trust me. Any little spoilers, anything you got, we're on it. Now, Jennifer, how do you go about structuring your books?
So when I write, I do a little bit of an outline for each chapter, so a couple sentences for each chapter. Of course, I sometimes add more, but once I have that outline, the organization kind of goes out the window. I tend to write the ending first, or at least part of it, so I know how I want the story to unfold. And then I tend to write what chapters interest me most at that moment. So if I'm in the mood for, say, an action scene, or if I'm in the mood for more a dialogue-heavy chapter, then I find that way I don't get writer's block as often, because I'm writing what I want to at that moment. I write till my inspiration runs out, and then either take a break or switch to a different chapter. And then some days I just go back and reread what I've written to add on to sentences or make new sentences, make the flow a little bit better, whatever it may be.
I like it. I'm someone who begins with the end as well. I always know where the story is going, especially where it's going to end. That's my favorite part. Chris, same question.
I generally have a loose skeleton, but like Jennifer, as I start putting the meat and bones on it, a lot of my organization or what I thought kind of goes out the window. I know who my cast of characters are. I kind of know who they are going to interact with or how they're going to interact. But each chapter kind of becomes its own story. And then the novel is just the concretization of all those stories coming together.
I like it. Very nice. Michael?
So funny thing, in another life, I am much more deliberate in organization and planning. In this world, I found I am very much a pantser. So I just throw things out there and write. I am extremely deliberate about my research, and I have pages upon pages upon pages of information that feeds into it. But in terms of character development, when I first had an editor, she asked me for a character profile, and I was like, I have no idea what that is. So I kind of I have an idea of where the story's going, and it's generally outlined in my head. But in terms of putting it down on paper, I don't really do that. I go from beginning to end straight through, and then I'll review it afterward. Starting with the end, though, I do what I like, and what's really inspired me from writing is starting with either a prologue or chapter 1, where it's starting at the end, and then I loop back. So I do kind of just like the rest of you, start at the end, but it's for the big picture. So
I like it. I like it, definitely. Now, Chris, how long did it take you to write that book?
It's a funny question. I actually had written that book about 20 years ago, and I didn't have the heart, to put it out. And you know what? Come the pandemic, I dusted it off and I rewrote it. I was really affected by the George Floyd riot, so I made sure there was characters in there that everyone could identify with, and it was a real joy redoing it. So yeah, about 20 years.
Very nice. Jennifer?
My story actually very similar. I wrote it about 8 years ago, and again, when didn't really have the heart to put it out there, and during the pandemic, I just decided nothing was really holding me back other than me. So I just decided to go for it and revamped it a little bit and just went for it.
Now, I know that I'm asking questions regarding the readers, but just for my own curiosity, do you believe that the pandemic changed your focus as to where you wanted to go or what kind of legacy you wanted to leave? Because I have found that a lot of authors more than a few, have changed directions where they wouldn't write fantasy before, or they wouldn't dare touch sci-fi or something along those lines, because there was always some reason that they believed that, okay, you're only allowed to write within one genre. So how do you feel about that, Jen?
I've always been a fantasy lover, so that didn't really change for me. I think more with the pandemic, it was just kind of the you only live once kind of feeling. And I did a lot of new things this year, like skydiving. So I just decided to give it a go.
And how was it?
It's been a great experience, and so skydiving.
See, the skydiving was what I was referring to, because I have always been intrigued with skydiving, scared to death of it, the idea, but it just sounds amazing. It looks amazing, and you will never catch me up there. So no, I'm very curious.
Yeah, it was amazing jumping out, and it was just great. It was a thrill to come down, and then even just relaxing after the parachute goes up. You just kind of watch the world.
Now, do you want to do it again, is the question.
I would do it again. A little costly, but otherwise I would definitely do it again.
Very nice. Chris?
Oh, I was thinking skydiving. That would terrify me. Jennifer, you got guts. As far as writing in the pandemic, I think, an author should feel free to have any genre they like. As a reader, I have several authors I like, King, J.K. Rowling. My all-time favorite is Dustin Kuntz. I love the way he storytells. A reader's not going to be stuck to one genre, so vice versa. I don't think an author, if they don't have to stick to one genre, they want to write fantasy, sci-fi, romance, and go for it.
See, I love that answer, because that's how I feel and have felt since I was a little girl, that, you write what you love and the story tells itself. And directionally, as a writer, you never know truly where the story is going to go. And I'm a firm believer in, I don't like censorship myself. I know that it's a hot topic, but I think a writer, if they do not have the freedom to write what they believe, what they think, their own truths, even within their, the character realm, I think that it is imperative that you have these characters, because society is forever changing.
It is.
Now, what is it that, I'm sorry, Michael, same question to you before we go on.
Regarding the pandemic, so I'm a new writer. So, I've been writing during the pandemic. It's taken me 2.5 to 3 years to write this book. So I agree with Chris that, you can write in any genre. So the funny thing about me is I love my favorite author of all time is Anne Rice, and she writes a lot of, historical fiction is really where her bread and butter is. What I love about her attention to detail. I wanted to write a historical fiction, and that's where I started, and it kind of just developed into sci-fi / dystopian. And I'm like, I had no plan to do that. So, I mean, I think you just write what inspires you and what makes you tick. And that's the best story. So.
I love that. Yeah, she was definitely missed. Now, one of my favorite all-time authors is Oscar Wilde. And because of that, I have had, and readers know this, watchers know this, I should say as well, and a lot of authors, I will pose this question to. Who is your favorite author, dead or alive, and why? Michael, we're going to start with you.
Okay, well, I already kind of answered that. Anne Rice, I would have to say, her attention to detail, I absolutely love that. And I love the way she can make you feel like you were actually there. And these places, I love travel. So the way she describes her settings and the scenes, it is so vivid and so real. It just takes you into the story.
Very true. Very true. Chris?
For me, it was Dean Koontz. He's got so many books on a wide variety of topics. Just like Michael was saying, there's the way they paint the story in your head. Even small things like two people having a cup of coffee, you can see it vividly. And I guess that's the way I've always wanted my writing to eventually be, is like him.
I love it. Jen?
Mine would be
Jen. I change people's names. I apologize.
No worries, everyone calls me Jen. Yeah, my favorite author is Mercedes Lackey. One of my first fantasy books, or at least that strongly impacted me, was one of hers, Brightly Burning. And I just got sucked into her world, and she writes so many books in here, but yeah, there's such good quality, and she can manage to write different series at the same time, which I find interesting. And I just love how her world is so vivid, and it's drawn on real life inspiration as well that she's talked about. And yeah, I just really like the fantasy element, and that's kind of what inspired me to write in fantasy as well.
Now, is there anything that you won't write?
For me, I don't know if I could write strong romance, because I don't usually read strong romance. I don't mind romance in a story, but if it was strictly romantic, I don't know if I could do that. But other than that, I'm always willing to try.
Chris?
My fantasy book is dark fantasy. If it had a rating, it would be rated R. I write about a lot of situations and stuff that, I kind of let people know before they get involved. As far as something I wouldn't write about anything that would injure or harm a child. And for me, that's a red line. But everything else is on.
Gotcha. Michael?
I'm like Jennifer, romance. I mean, I'm not something I would want to delve into, really.
Now, just as a FYI for myself, what do you believe romance, what makes it, because that's not the first time I have heard authors state romance is just something I am not in favor of writing at this moment. Is there any elements to that can any of you kind of tell us why that is? Chris?
I mean, just speaking for myself, I write, my book is 700 pages long. There's instances of lovemaking, but there's also innocence of two people falling in love. And writing from both different perspectives is very interesting. I tried to be true to it. I never tried to be graphic, but true to the story, so to speak. But some of those situations for me were hard to write about. I think, being a married man is, when you write about sex, you want them to think that that's between the characters, and I don't know, it gets weird sometimes.
Makes you feel like you got a camera in your room.
Yeah, it's different. It's easier to write a love story, you know, for me, because it's all under romance if you think about it. But writing a love story is a lot easier than talking about two people who might be naked.
True, very true. Michael, how about you, dear?
Yeah, I mean, I think just the being able to explain that intimacy aspect is something that I don't really think I have the ability to. I mean, I guess I could, but it just I don't really know how I would convey it. You know, just yeah.
Gotcha. Jennifer, how about you?
Kind of the same. Like I have a bit of romance in my book, but it's definitely more. They're younger, and it's even the scenes I do have regarding sex are very non-descriptive. So I do think that would be the part I would have the most trouble with, is trying to be descriptive of that. I don't really know where I would start. I think I could do more on the romance side of it. But again, I wrote the story mostly when I was 22, so I don't know if maybe I just didn't have the experience, the knowledge to write about it. So it'd be interesting to see in the future if I develop that anymore.
Oh, definitely. That's why I ask these questions. I love putting people on the spot, because you find the most interesting things that they're like, wow, I didn't know I thought that way. That is amazing, you know? And then when they go back and watch the footage, because I end up sending them the footage from the tapings, they'll email me immediately and be like, oh my God, did I really say this? Or did I really feel this way? I didn't even know. So, you know, in the exploration of writing, you know, we're people watchers more than anything, and our environment and all the different things in world building. Now, how do you take reality and turn it into fantasy or fiction? How does that happen for you, Jennifer?
I think I take elements of the real world in terms of, even though it's fantasy, making some things realistic. So for example, in my book, all the characters have wings. That's why there's wings on the cover as well. And so I took, with the rain or with sun, I took elements of the real world to make sure it made sense how the feathers would get damp, or how it would affect their flying ability, things like that. So even though flying is not something in the real world, I still wanted it to make some sense, if that makes sense. And I also looked up things for my new story I'm working on in terms of how lake affects weather. And so I do take real elements of the world to make sure it fits in.
Okay. Michael?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier how intent I am in my research. So I base a lot on the real world. And I mean, my novel is based, at least this first novel is based on Earth primarily. So I mean, there's me wanting to do historical fiction. I am very big in, you know, making sure every scene is as realistic as possible. I do touch on, so funny thing, when I first went to an editor, I'm huge in, you know, making existential arguments and metaphysical arguments. And that's another reason I love Anne Rice and I wanted to write like her, because those are the conversations that really drive me. And it really got my wife and I together. That's what we found, that common ground. So my book covers a lot of very existential topics. I hit on political themes, gender themes, a whole bunch of prevalent themes of today. And I fictionalize it in a way that, I guess the way I fictionalized it was because my characters are, in a sense, AI, and there's also an extraterrestrial component to it. So that's the way that I kind of diverted it off of reality, but I convey it as a, you know, dystopian future. It's a worst case scenario of this is where we could be going. I kind of lost where I was going with that. So, oh yeah, the funny story. When I got it to my editor, her first response was, "Are you sure you want to write fiction?" And I took that, I was like, oh my gosh, are you saying I'm that bad of a writer? And she actually compared my writing to Chomsky and was like, no, I think your book is more of a political discourse. And like, it seems like you want to write more nonfiction. I'm like, no, I want to write this fiction book. But like, it was just, for a new writer to get that response is day one. I'm like, oh no. Yeah.
But that goes back to the topic we were just discussing. You know, as writers, I've always felt we have a responsibility to write about topics that, you know, may be either cliche or may be taboo to, you know, society in general. But if they are going on and happening, you know, they are beyond relevant. And because of that, I think it's kind of our responsibility to touch, you know, light on that or bring light on that. So, Jennifer, is there any spoilers in your book that you could give readers to look for?
That's an interesting one.
Without
Usually I'm trying to
revealing
hide the
too much.
spoilers. Let me think. I think in terms of like kind of breadcrumbs throughout the story, leading up to the ending, would be focusing on like how they fight and what methods they use or specifically don't use. And maybe someone uses them.
Okay. Chris?
My story starts with a young man named Kevin who saw something he wasn't supposed to, and it kind of catapults the whole book forward. About halfway through the book, they begin believing that Kevin may be supernatural or born from magic, so to speak, and they give him this supernatural title and thrust him in this role that it's just not him. And towards the end of the book, he's faced with all these people idolizing him, singing songs about him. And he's just worried about the battle coming because he's like, they're all going to see me for who I am, a 15-year-old kid. And when the battle finally does come, he actually begins doing very heroic things. And now even he is starting to believe by the end of the book that maybe he is this person. So it's an interesting way of going through the story. It's not the main story, it's a subplot, but to watch his maturity as he's going on is a lot of fun.
See, this is why I ask these questions. Michael?
Yeah, so I think for
something
me,
special for him.
yeah, for me, one of the big things is faith. So as you heard in my blurb, it's a faithless society. So they eradicated faith. All religion is dead. There's no God, none acceptable at all. However, there are significant like hints of, I guess, religiosity. I don't know if that's a word, but like religiousness in the book. And there are certain characters that align with religion in a faithless world that kind of give you hints on who are the good guys and who are the bad guys. Because for the most part, my characters are very indiscernible to a certain point. It takes a while for you to understand who is good and who is bad. And even at the very end, you're not going to completely know because this is part of a series. I've already started book 2, so it's a 4-book series. So you're going to have to keep going to really understand who it is. But I really turn our world on its head because these beings are things that have been on Earth for millennium and they've been shaping our world. And they are experiencing existential problems that humans experience, even though they are not quote unquote human. So, yeah.
That is
awesome.
I don't know. They're going to be so excited when they see this show. Now, Jennifer, what character surprised you the most? And did they change direction of the story itself?
Yeah, I think because Eileen was always my main character, so I kind of knew how she was going to go. But I'd say the messenger I focused on, the Diathy, took the story in a different way as I used his perspective a lot. And he's also spurred ideas in me for like a prequel, which involving him specifically, because I realized I wanted to know more about this character myself. So it didn't necessarily spur as much during the story itself, but it spurred other ideas for future work. But I do really like how I developed his character, and it just kept growing throughout the Cardinal War. And definitely during editing, his side of it was the part I edited probably the most to elaborate on.
Okay. Michael?
Yeah, so I have a character named Set, S-E-T. Not my main character by any means. He had a very minor role in my first draft. He is kind of your comedic relief, aggressive character to break the, deep tones of metaphysical conversation. He was supposed to, just lighten the load a little bit. But as he developed, I realized he could have a very pivotal role. And when I did rewrites, I inserted him in earlier in the book, because my main character is Nesha. She's a female and she's a very important character, but Set he kind of balances her out. The way he developed in the connection that my editor had with him, and the discussions that led from that connection ultimately led me into realizing, he may be a much bigger player in my sequel. And especially I have the titles for all 4 of my books. I already know where it's going, and he is going to be the key figure in book 3. And I'm slowly ramping up to him in book 2. So, and funny thing, my wife brought up just yesterday, she was like, hey, you know what? Like, cause I was like, I don't know. I feel bad that Set might be more important than Nesha. And cause she's my girl, she's who I created. And she was like, Anne Rice, like, she did not intend Lestat to be her number 1, and he ended up being, so she was like, maybe Set's your guy, so who knows? But yeah, so.
I think every writer experiences that at least once. The character that is a good character, a strong character, but there comes a point where the ideas and the vision just keep running, and it's like this character pulls at you and is like, write me, I want a life, and that is something that I think readers thrive on. They're waiting for that next character that they can be invested in, Now, Jennifer, same question.
I did answer that one.
I'm sorry, Chris.
Yeah, I think Chris. Yeah.
I was paying attention.
It's all good. In the Quest series, there's a number of individuals who have been envisioned. That's why they're thrown together, but they're a real dysfunctional group. It's military, it's a convict, a princess, an outlander. And one of the moments I really enjoyed was the princess, writing from someone who lived in a castle and had servants and food, to being out in the wilds, people trying to murder them. It's dirty, it's filthy. I love the beginning of it. Everybody likes to see kind of like a privileged person put into, a desperate situation. But about halfway through the book, the person that she matured into, I really liked. And it really gave her a story arc that I didn't have for her at the beginning. And then going into the book and into the second book, like Michael, I'm nearly completed with the second one, is the person she's become is just amazing. It's been a real shock to myself.
I love it. Now, is there any characters that the flaws, and I don't want to just say under the pretext of flaws, but have you ever had any of those character traits surprise you in any way? Did they divert from what they were in the beginning? Chris?
Yeah, there's a certain villainy in this group. One of them is a really disfigured looking private. He's been disfigured from battle. He's gross, he's lewd. But more realistic when I put him in, he was just to be like, I don't know, a different version of the Light. He wasn't going to per se be a villain, but as I wrote the book, it came out that he would betray them. And even try and, kidnap the princess for himself later on. So he ended up being somebody that was crude and rude to someone who was truly villainous, you know. So that was a great journey. I like that.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Jennifer?
I would say even my main character, really, Eileen, she has a lot, even just being a thief comes with some, I guess, flaws, you say, in the sense of she steals from people. She has to live on the streets where it's dirty. She's not really known anything else. She didn't know her parents. She grows up through the story, and she still has flaws. She's keeping secrets that she knows is putting people in harm's way and causing extra fighting that doesn't need to happen. But you kind of see the reasons behind why she's doing it. And as her relationships grow with, say, Diathy and some of the other characters, she grows up into becoming who she is. And those flaws kind of make her who she becomes.
Okay. Michael?
Yeah, probably my main character, Nesha. I mean, she has some very human flaws that are kind of the beauty in what I was writing, because she is not human. So I really wanted her to, she experienced abandonment. So I in my initial swags at writing a premise and a blurb, I was talking about, you know, her feeling like an orphan, because she has makers, and that's where the whole religious and faith concept come into it, that she's searching for this purpose that she doesn't have, just like humans are. And those really drive her to the behaviors and the decisions that she has made. And when we meet her in the book, she is effectively given up on her mission that she was sent to Earth to do in the first place, because she has become apathetic and had, you know, just so lost and depressed. And at certain points in the book, you can see her like as a possible suicidal person, you know, like it's just so harsh of what she is dealing with. But she ultimately grows through that with the help of others. And when she realizes, you know, she starts to trust people, and not so much trust people, but opening herself up a little more, you see her grow. So.
Okay. Now, how do any of you and all of you deal with writer's block or self-doubt, which I kind of think run hand in hand, but that's just my take. Michael?
So for me, I am sorry, I'm distracted. My cats are trying to knock down my Christmas tree. Okay.
On this show, that's normal. Just flash the camera on them and we get a little shot of them.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, for me, I am so busy. I'm moving at 100 miles per hour. I'm doing so many different things, and I love writing. I've always loved writing. So I write a blog. I also have published nonfiction books, and I'm working on a children's book series. So for me, really, when I have the most writer's block, I find is when I'm writing professionally for my blog. But when that happens, I really I'm a big runner. I go out for, you know, exercise, or I'll change projects, and I'll just, it doesn't last very long for me. So
Great
I
advice.
just juggle various things.
I like that. Great advice. So do you find diversions and walking away from your work for a while, setting it aside and going on to something else kind of restirs that desire to go back to it?
Yeah, it actually does. So my book, I took a major hiatus from my book. I mean, not 20 years. I never, or 8, however long some of you have been working on books, but for me, it was long. I worked for 2 years consecutively on it. And then I kind of hit a block and just didn't really, it was when I was editing, I was self-editing, and I'm a huge perfectionist. So that was my big block, was I was like, this is horrible. I don't like this, and I don't know what to do. I was rewriting everything. So I just put it aside, and I was like, well, I'm starting this business, and I focused on my business. I focused on working on that. And once I got the business, I set certain goals. Once I got to a certain point that I was like, I'm convinced that I've been successful so far in building this. Now I can go back, and I looked at the book, and I was like, hey, I'm inspired. I'm ready to go. Boom. And I got it done in a month. So.
Very nice. Chris?
Like I said, I started this story 20 years ago, and I just didn't have enough self-confidence in myself. I guess I saw myself leading a certain life. Come the pandemic, blew the dust off it. I radically changed the entire direction of the book, took some characters out, put others in, and put it together that way. As for like writer's block, it happens. I mean, for me, I don't know why, but the creativity doesn't turn on till like 10 o'clock at night, and I pour through till like 2 in the morning. But through the day, I'll think about conversations or places or events. And I know that as a writer, if I can't see it, my reader can't see it either. So if I'm writing something and I'm like, man, this is vague, I'll just stop. I'll work it out. And then once I do, it's on.
Yeah, I'm a lot like you. I'm nocturnal. I'm up all night. I prefer writing at night. It's just I guess the quiet stirrings, because I write dark literature. So it's another beast all itself. The night.
It is, but when it's dark like that, it's like
I love it. Love it. As you can tell, this is
great.
Orpheus, my muse. I'm sorry I didn't introduce you. But he actually plays in the cinematics that I make, and the night has certain stirrings that you feel like you're on another planet. You do it at certain times, and it's things that the little things you would never notice, and I love taking notice of that kind of thing. So enough about me. Shows about you guys. Now, Jennifer?
So I'm also an evening writer, not necessarily 2 in the morning, but definitely evening, especially when my boyfriend's busy doing something. I find that if he's distracted, then I'm able to focus, even though I don't know why, but even if I know he's doing something, I can just focus more. In terms of writer's block, I just find because I write out of order, I don't get it too often. And if I do, I'm the same way as Michael, where I'll just kind of do a diversion, either switch projects or listen to music. Sometimes the project is not necessarily a different story, but it's planning my world. So I do have a document of like the empire as a whole, what the weather is like in different cities, what the wind color will be like in different cities. Whether anything comes of those musings, I'm not sure yet, but it's nice to have a diversion to focus the world, and then I can go back to the story, which sometimes adds new elements to it as well.
Definitely. Now, touching on the note of ambiance, how do you create amongst different characters? How do you relay to a reader that feeling of being involved in the story and sending them to that next level where they are living vicariously through these characters? Chris?
For me, when I said I dusted off this book, I put myself through some experiences. I took wilderness survival training. I learned to fight with a sword, learned to use a bow. I wanted to write situations that were realistic. And not everyone in the book has the same fighting style or even the same outlook. Some people try and run from battle. So, I try to make different people react and do things differently so that they stick out. The quest group is 11 people, and it's hard. It's kind of like The Hobbit. You had 11 dwarves. It was really hard for them to stand out one way or the other. So through different personalities and different reactions, you get a real strong understanding of who they are, how they're going to react. And then as the storyline progresses and you see a conflict coming, you kind of know who's going to do well and who's going to be running and ducking for cover.
Okay. Jennifer?
Well, my story doesn't have 11 characters in the main cast, but I just find with descriptions of the setting that they're experiencing for the first time, like I really like a scene I wrote with Eileen experiencing a giant library, because you learn early on that she loves to read whenever she can, steal books or find books, but just the experience she has and the awe she has of things kind of draws you into her world. And I do that with a few other characters when they're experiencing something. Another scene I really liked was one of the other characters, Ryden. He, at nighttime, he has his musings and just kind of experiences the world around him as everyone's asleep. And you learn what he's feeling. He doesn't say anything during that because he doesn't want to speak and wake anyone up, but you can hear his thoughts and just see what he's seeing. So I try and draw people in that way.
Very nice. Michael?
Yeah, so I really wrote my book from personal experience. So it's a very, very personal story. And if you are a character, the characters portray people that I've experienced in my real life. And if you are one of them, you will know it. If you're not, you're going to have no idea. But in terms of drawing people who aren't those characters into those lives, I think it's through the way that I really try to portray that real life experience through writing. So I had my wife, she experienced a lot of the same things that I did. And there's a lot of trauma that go into this book that I think having her as a kind of balancing, working those two perspectives through the proofreading and the constant process, we really found a way to give voice to each of the characters. So.
Okay. Now, I'm going to ask, what is your advice for new authors that you, during your journey, have experienced or came on the other side of and said, wow, I did not know it was like that? Chris?
Editing is, wow.
We already say that's the devil's work.
It is. You know, when I'm writing, I use Microsoft Word and I have Grammarly. So it helps me a lot of my grammar anyways. My book is 719 pages long. I went through it 2 or 3 times editing it and still wasn't happy. I guess my advice to others is, you know, when I finally got an editor, that's when the story really just exploded in front of me, because I could see it now in its professional form rather than a diamond in the rough. So going to get that editor or reaching out for professional help, it doesn't mean that you've somehow failed or that, you know, you can't do it. Everybody needs help, even the best of us. Like I said, my favorite is Dean Koontz. He needs help. So, you know, reaching out for that help is really a true sign of a good writer.
Okay, great advice. Michael?
I would say humoring yourself, knowing that, you know, you're not perfect and there's going to be a lot of errors. So something I really struggled with was going through. So the editor wasn't so bad. You know, when I got an editor, you know, her telling me fix this, fix that, it was fine. When my wife proofread it and we went over it over the last 48 hours, I was like, I did not have the thick skin I did with my editor. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't like this? And, you know, I realized, yeah, I had that perspective of my wife, but what it was that she was giving me the perspective of a reader. And I think Chris mentioned it, you know, that like you have to help these readers see what's in your head. And that was something that I wasn't doing. And she gave me that perspective that, you know, you see this, and she even knows, like, it made it even worse because she knows what the story is. She knows what I'm trying to convey. She's like, that's not what I'm getting. And so, you know, I think really just humoring yourself, reaching out for help, and also understanding that editing doesn't necessarily have to break the bank. There are ways to find help. I reached out to so many different groups. I just by chance found a grad school student who just got her degree to be a editor, and she wants to be a mechanical editor, and she was trying to build her portfolio, and she did it for free to build her portfolio. And I had to, of course, take that with a grain of salt that she's not a, you know, well-developed, you know, professional editor yet, but, you know, that was a risk for me, and the reward was really high. And now we have a long-term partnership that she's going to edit my entire series, and I'm going to exchange services with her, and I'm not going to have to pay for that editing. So, I mean, there are ways to do it. You just have to be a people person, reach out, be a go-getter.
Good for her. Do you want to let readers know or other writers know and help her build her business? What is her
Yeah, her name is Rebecca Robinson, and I believe her website is rebeccarobinson.wixsite.com right now. I'm going to help her try and actually get a website. So that's what I also build websites. So that's part of the exchange of services I'm going to help her with.
Well, let her know that we plugged her on this show. That way she better be prepared.
Okay,
She's
awesome.
going to get 1,000 calls. Jennifer.
My biggest thing would just be kind of go for it. Like both me and Chris have said, we waited a while because we didn't think we were ready for it. But I think there's so many people that want to read your story, even though you don't think they do. And yeah, some people may not like it, but not everyone likes every book. We have preferences, and just sometimes a book may not strike with you. But I think just go for it, write what you love, and the story will reflect your love in it. I definitely agree with the editing as well. I got lots of perspective from my editor. Even simple things I use the word softly too many times. So just specific words that apparently I use frequently, and I've noted that for future ones. And I also have, I use my boyfriend as a sounding board as well, even during the writing, as well as now that I've done the Cardinal War. We had a good long discussion of what strong points were, what weak points were, and what I can use for future stories and how I can develop it further. So definitely recommend having a sounding board person.
Okay. Well, everyone, I have had a lovely time, and I thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm going to go down the line, and can you tell readers, how can we reach you? Michael.
Yeah, you can find me on my website at michaelcamariobooks.com. I also have a Facebook author group page called Camarillo Book Club, and I'm also on Instagram as well, Michael Camarillo Books.
Okay, wonderful. Chris?
I'm listed under Hugo Hobbs. My work is currently on Amazon KDP. If you look up Quest for Fire by Hugo Hobbs, you'll see my book waiting for you. It's currently selling ebook for $4.99, but like I said, I'll have paperback very soon. I just want to give a special shout out to my editor, Kate Seeger, and my cover art designer, Danielle Doolittle.
Okay, we love that. Because I have, like I said, I get a lot of emails, and I have a lot of response that there'll constantly be a chain of new authors, debut authors that are like, how do I find an editor? Or, do you know of any names or any other author that I could speak with regarding this or that? So thank you for
Definitely.
both of you for plugging the people who helped make this cohesive, your work. We love that.
Great work.
Always appreciated. Always appreciated here. Jennifer?
So my website is jennifertempestbooks.com. There's also blogs on there. I also have my links on there for Instagram, Facebook, and Goodreads. All my profiles are linked on the About an Author page. And also where to buy my book, because it's on all the Amazons and Indigo Online and Barnes & Nobles online as well.
Okay. Guys, it's been a pleasure, and I thank you so much for joining us. And readers, we do this for you.
Thank you so much for
Night
having us.
Vision. Say that again.
Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, of course. Anytime. Please hit me up and let me know. You're more than welcome.
Thank you so much.
Readers, you're very welcome. And readers, I hope you join us next week again for Night Vision. Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.